Hello. Greetings, people of the interwebs, and welcome to Durance the Masquerade. I am Jim. I use he, him pronouns, and today we are playing this channel's third game of Durance. But as I'm sure you've probably sussed out, we'll be bending it in a slightly unusual direction. Instead of a prison colony, we're going to be using it to tell the story of two competing vampire societies. Durance doesn't have a GM, but I'm going to be acting as host. Let's go ahead and go around and introduce everyone. I think I'll go ahead and start on my right up here, and I'm going to ask you to say who you are and what your favorite piece of vampire media is. And we'll start with Janaya. Hello!
Hello! My name is Janaya, and my pronouns are she, her. And my favorite vampire media is probably the movie Only Lovers Left Alive, even though it's really just a buddy film that happens to have vampires in it. But man, I love that movie.
Awesome. I have not actually seen that. I need to
so good.
I need to write these things down so I can check them out later. And let's move around to Jane or Celador. Hello.
Hey there. I'm Jane or Celador 10. I also use she, her pronouns. And my favorite vampire media, I don't watch a ton of vampire stuff. I enjoy Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was trying to remember if the show Lost Girl had any vampires on it, and I actually think it might not have. So in all 6 seasons of that show. So lots of other supernatural stuff though.
Cool. Again, more things I need to check out when I have time. I need to make clones so that I can just get them to consume the media for me. As for me, it's as I realize I didn't say what my favorite thing was, and I guess it probably still is, the World of Darkness, at least as it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. I've not actually had much of a chance, time-wise, to catch up with things lately, and so I'm not really, and there's a lot going on right now, as I'm sure many of you who are into gaming are aware of, and it's nothing I want to get anywhere near at the moment to worry about. I actually, I have faith that a good vampire game can come out again soon, and I just waiting to see when that happens. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll see kind of how things go on that. But I do like very much the Vampire the Masquerade setting, and again, my main familiarity with it was when I was in a club, a global organization, which I affectionately refer to as the Running Around Pretending to be Vampires Club, which is not its official name apparently. Despite how often I used to call it that, it just never stuck. It's basically, we did a LARP that was and they're still doing sort of LARPs in a persistent world, and we did that a lot, and I had much fun with it. In both the old World of Darkness and the new World of Darkness, I did that for quite a while. But moving to what we are doing here today. One thing I want to actually just mention before we get deep into it here is that this can be very much a game about terrible people doing terrible things. In this case, that's on a supernatural level. So just so you folks will know, we're going to be using the X card, the N card, and the O card. If we hit something that's crossing a line for you, any of the players can type an X in the Zoom video chat or anywhere else, or make an X symbol, and we'll back up and we will do something else. If something happens that you're okay having in the game but you don't want a graphic description of it, you can type an N in the Zoom chat and we'll fade to black on it, or we'll just put it behind a veil. So it'll be there, but we won't go into detail. And finally, if you're in the midst of intense role-playing and you think we might be worried you're really upset out of character, you can put an O in the chat to let us know you're okay and that we're good to keep piling on the drama. Something else we can do is put an O with a question mark after it when we say or do something, and then think, oh, wait a minute, that might be a bit too much. Then everyone else can respond to that and just let us know if we're still doing okay. While we're probably going to be tormenting our characters quite a bit, we just want to make sure we don't have that happening to the players so much. So we can all just relax and have a good time. So let us jump into this thing and see how we do this. I am slightly terrified because I am taking a tool that I have confidence will work for this other thing that it was not designed for, but we shall see how it goes. I'm actually very interested in doing this experiment. So Durance, in and of itself, Durance by Jason Morningstar. It was written by Jason Morningstar, same fellow who wrote Fiasco. What it does is it tells the story of these two conflicting social ladders out in deep space on a prison planet, typically. You have the authority on one side and you have the convicts on the other. Now, I took a look at that, and I've played, and I've now played multiple games of Durance, and I enjoy it quite a lot. It tells some really interesting dark stories about things generally falling apart. That's often what it's about. When I play anyway, it seems to be. But I looked at the competing social ladders, and I thought, it would be interesting to see. I feel like you could put any two societies that are at odds with each other up against each other using that structure and get a story out of it. So that's kind of what I want to try at this point, because you have in the vampire setting, you have the Camarilla and you have the Anarchs, and I mean, things are very structured over on the Camarilla side. They're the ones that are more nominally typically in charge, or at least consider themselves to be in any given city, as far as they're trying to control their population and what their population does, and maintain the Masquerade, which is the veil of secrecy that they have in place. That the idea that there are no vampires, that they don't exist, and they have a lot of rules for that, but they also have this very sort of deadly pre-station game that they play with each other. Then there are vampires who reject that, but they don't necessarily have a huge agenda per se. A lot of them end up in the Anarch movement. They're more interested in personal freedom and just, personal responsibility. It's like, oh, don't let people find out about vampires. Well, yeah, sure, obviously, that's, that makes sense. That's why we do that. So, I mean, they follow the Masquerade. They do, they don't just, rush around violently trying, necessarily doing whatever they want, but they also don't want to play the same games that a lot of elders tend to. They don't want to necessarily as much, or at least they say they don't want to play those games with the lives of other vampires, or indeed the mortals necessarily. But whether that's true or not, well, we'll find out. This is going to be for a particular city that we're putting together. Before the game started, we picked out the various elements we'd start with. We're gonna still follow the structure of play for Durance for this, we're going to, so we're gonna have vampires. We're gonna see where this goes. So initially, you have what is in Durance. You have the planetary survey and the colonial record, where you pick out these letters that should be visible in the to our right if you're watching this right now, and that usually what happens is you pick those out and you look up in the book what that is, what planet that ends up being, what colony that ends up being, and that's sort of what you play. We're gonna I still would like to look at it just to get an idea, but this is actually going to be translated more to a city, and to the status of the Camarilla domain in it. So looking this over. Also, incidentally, I just want to mention, it doesn't matter to me how people pronounce that. There have been pronunciation wars for years in this setting in particular about how you say different things. You can say Camarilla, Camarilla, you can say however you want to pronounce it. I'm fine with that. I imagine in the fictional world, if it is as diverse as Earth is, that you can just walk a few miles and people are saying things differently. So I don't think there's any sort of set authority or agreement over it. But on the city survey elements that we have here, I have the cards here, but it's I've changed some of these around a little bit to more effectively, instead of looking at a whole planet, we're looking at a city. So let's but like I did with the previous ones, let's start with the positives and then move to the what's really going on side of things. So we have B, C, and E was picked out before, and B in Durance talks about the climate. It talks about a good climate with a good surface temperature and weather patterns and atmospheric stability being favorable. I am interpreting that as a good population of humans from which to feed and in which to hide. Yeah, exactly. It's a way to just sort of determine that, get a sort of a barometer for that. So we decided that the human population is high. So that means it is easy to lose yourself amongst the kind. They don't necessarily it's a good environment for that, and for both for hiding and for feeding in that regard. Now, under the letter C, under Durance rules, is the geology, which usually tells us the terrain is easy to manage, activity in the planetary crust is predictable where it isn't completely calm. I interpreted that as navigation through the city. In this city, navigation is easy. You can get from place to place pretty quickly. There is a good rapid transit system. There are no... my phone is beeping. I'm going to turn the sound off because that is what a good host does. There we go. Yay, distractions. When you are... when you're sort of looking at just getting around the city, generally you can get from place to place quickly. Maybe even for vampires, there might be a good way, just as well as for humans, they have ways that it's vampire friendly. The transportation is they don't check your identity too much, and you can get from place to place. So it's not Atlanta, apparently. For I used to live in Atlanta, and I can tell you, hour and a half.
Yeah, there are some of those cities were not designed for public transit.
No.
I grew up in Houston. That is also not a public transit designed city, for sure.
Cool. No. It's weird it's interesting, when you get into one of those cities, and I don't know about. I know that Atlanta specifically was kind of more like this, where I would describe it as not so much a grid as a spider web, and just sort of couldn't find anything. But it took me like 4 years to finally be able to get around without a map, and then I moved. So, and then we also had the letter E, which is endurance. That's biology. The local biology is good. Native flora and fauna are abundant, generally benign across varied, flourishing ecosystems. I took that to mean, in this case, that resources are abundant. That means that there is a lot of resources the city has that vampires can exploit. That can mean any number of things, but it means that there is probably public funding or public or private funding in place, however that happens, for different programs that vampires can, in one way or another, take advantage of if they want to. It can mean there are a lot of hidey holes. It can mean there's an extensive sewer system if we want to keep the Nosferatu happy. All manner of different things are in place. And this we'll kind of, I think, to a certain extent, learn more what that means as we figure out who our notables are, because I think that's going to mean, like, depending on what, if we get a particular clan heavy in here, then that'll tell us, oh, okay, this means that, there are a lot of Toreador. That means that the arts district is awesome, that kind of thing. Now, on the other side, the things that are less than ideal about this city that this is set in. Under the letter A, which is not present, I have that as now Durance, that's atmosphere. which if the atmosphere isn't good at all, tainted, foul, polluted, thin, dense, toxic, corrosive, otherwise impossible to breathe, unfiltered, I took that in this case to mean that there is high hunter activity. Apparently, there's a very, very good group, possibly multiple groups of hunters here active in the city. There are a number of different kinds of hunter groups in the setting that we can use if we want. The church-associated one is called the Society of Leopold. There are government hunters that are out there with a few different projects. There are those who study more arcane things. They're called the Arcanum. There are a lot of different ones, and we can even make one up if we want to, if we decide that it becomes important enough. None of the hunters are necessarily going to be notables, unless we want to say there's an ex-hunter that's a vampire. These are all vampires, but it's just as part of what's out there. So the atmosphere, in that sense, is not good. Hydrology is D. That's hydrology is excellent. Surface water is abundant and drinkable, just like home. I, in this case, interpret it to mean that whether the kine are docile or if they are resistant. The kine here, the mortals, the humans, are resistant somewhat. So these, while there's a high population, it's not so easy to feed as you might think. There is, for whatever reason, and there can be a number of reasons for this, the human population, while high, is not necessarily that easy to fool when it comes to feeding on them. Maybe there are a lot of public awareness programs or good neighborhood watches or what have you. A lot of people carry mace or weaponry or whatever. That's a possibility. Just essentially means that while you've got a lot to choose from, still may take you a while to find someone who you can actually feed on for whatever reason. And finally, on the planetary survey, intelligent life, which is not absent. It says natives are intelligent and primitive, but clearly keen on catching up as fast as they can. What I interpret that to mean is that there are other supernatural creatures present in the city. Now, in the World of Darkness context, that could mean werewolves. That could mean human mages, basically folks who have awakened or are able to use the raw stuff of magic. It could mean changelings, fey creatures that are inhabiting sort of human shells or appearances of humans. It can mean a lot of ghosts. It can mean several different things, but whatever they are, they're out there. Whatever they are out there, and one has to share the city with them. At best, one has to share the city with them. At worst, one has to deal with fighting them or hiding from them, depending on what it is we choose. A lot of clearly marked territory out there. So that's the city. I think if we wanted inspiration about the planet, that would be in Durance. That's B, C, and E. So that's Broken Ladder. So the planet itself is a water planet. It's filled with a variety of harmless life forms. Blah 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 blah. But a somewhat polluted atmosphere. Existing water is contaminated. And semi-intelligent natives seem to delight in wrecking our filtration equipment. So we could use that as a prompt if we want to. In terms of the city, it could be a coastal city. It could be a city where there's just a lot of water available, which would go with there being resources. But at the same time, it's like perhaps it's very tightly controlled in some manner. It's like so that's a thing to consider as to what that might mean. Do we want to talk about that a little bit before we go on to the domain, or do you want me to just go over the domain first?
We can talk about the place. I was thinking when you said that the water was contaminated, with the kind not being docile, it could be something along the lines of some sort of a blood disease that's transferring that maybe isn't even noticeable in humankind, but is noticeable when the vampire feeds on them.
I love that.
I like that too.
And no one's sure if it's something that just developed naturally amongst humans, or if it's something that was put in place from the other creatures that are present in our city.
I like that. So it could have been the other creatures. It could have been the hunters. Either way.
It could ultimately be like maybe there was a genetic mutation and those are humans that didn't get fed on, right?
Yeah.
Get killed or turned by vamps. And so they're a more resilient population, and that genetic mutation has like expanded.
I mean, that.
There's multiple options. I think they're all really cool.
Yeah. That's interesting. So some sort of blood-borne. Well, a thing where it discourages you to feed on them, one way or the other, I would guess, is kind of what we're going for here. I'm thinking. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, where you just don't know. So it could even be something where the Camarilla side has a set of kind of feeding grounds that they know are safe, like various ghouls and stuff that they've brought into the group that they can feed off of and be all right. But the neonates are kind of denied access to that safe blood pool and have to go out and take the risk, of feeding off of strangers.
Oh man. Okay, so something. Okay. Something has come to mind, but I'm not gonna. But yeah, let's not go there entirely. I just had a terrible idea. I'm going to put it away because it's not going to fit here. Anyway. Yes. The ability to stop oneself. Anyway. No, so yeah, it could totally be a thing. I was trying to figure out if there's some sort of demarcation even in the human populace where you can kind of tell. Not necessarily by looking at them per se, or even it could be just like certain neighborhoods where they know that it doesn't get to as much. That might be like the more restricted feeding grounds. And then, but then the further out you go, the more likely it is that you'll hit this problem, whatever it is, when you get there. Do we want this to be like a supernatural sort of thing, or do we want it to be more mundane?
I think also tied up in that is how does it affect the vampires who feed on those people too? I mean, is it a gradual degenerative disease? Is it, does it maybe like block our abilities for a certain amount of time? What's the consequence too? And I think those kind of go together.
Yeah. Well, there are a few different possibilities that I've seen used before. Sometimes in like fiction or in games, I've seen things where it makes them just go into frenzy. I've seen things where there are bloodborne diseases that in the fiction of vampire or in other things where it's like it starts slowly making them rot. There could be we could go for something like that. We could go for something big. We could go for something subtle, where it will just sort of. It could. I mean, blocking powers sounds interesting. Although,
Yeah, I think how terrible it is has to be balanced out by how common it is. So, like, if it's going to make you rot, it has to be something that doesn't show up all the time. But if it's something that, say, develops a random frenzy that occurs, it could be pretty common. Which would also, if it was something like a random frenzy, that would be something that would allow the Camarilla to hold on to the safe feeding grounds for the higher ups, saying that it's totally acceptable for, newer vampires to frenzy because they're just uncontrollable anyway.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, funny thing that I am remembering also from World of Darkness lore is that werewolf blood, if you drink it, does also make a vampire frenzy.
That's cool.
So, and I mean, actually, sort of fey blood, if they drink it, sort of is like a hallucinogen for them. So it's, and they're perhaps more prone to frenzy, but it's also their, yeah. So there are a few different things one could do if we wanted to say that's involved. Like there's maybe some sort of program where someone is, if there are werewolves around, say for example, someone is harvesting werewolf blood and introducing it somewhat into the water supply.
Well, that could also just be one of the many conspiracy theories. Like, we wouldn't have to decide here what it is.
That's
I mean,
true.
that could be part of the, like, when we get into the structure of the city.
Yeah.
It could be part of where the chaos comes from, is the fact that there's people who believe that the werewolves are doing it, and there's people who believe that it's a natural reaction of humanity trying to expel vampires. And
They just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I feel like the rumor mill is a core part of like the vampire canon, right? Because that place is dark or weird, or people don't remember things after they go. That kind of rumor mill is classic. Yeah.
Nice. I like this much. Okay. I think. Are there any other other details we want to hammer out about this city in particular? I think we probably should hammer out one or two things also, just to figure out. Do we want to figure out roughly where this is and what this city is called, or do we want to? Are we making up a city? Or are we using a real one, or what do you think?
I don't have any definite opinions. Did we want it to be watery still? Because it's watery in the book.
I like the idea.
Yeah, that seems nice.
So there's Miami is just islands.
Yeah, we can go.
And has water threats. Or
It
we
has
could
a
do
high
New Orleans.
population too, which would be cool.
So we could do with. So what I think I'm going to recommend is, now that I'm thinking about it, is a Miami-like city in Florida, and we can even call it Miami if we want. I'm going to use the inspector's approach for this, the approach I used when I was running inspectors. We can even call it Miami. It's going to be very similar to Miami, but it's not the real Miami.
A legally distinct brand of
legally, yes, similar to, but legally distinct from Miami.
I actually, if you look at our domain record, like population density is high, planning is not particularly meticulous given when Miami was built, order is not very well established, and justice is swift. Can our justice be the CSI Miami dude?
Oh my god. I have not seen that, but certainly. I've never actually seen any of the CSI shows, but it's yeah. I mean, it could totally be someone who has that job, or someone like that. Yeah, I think that's funny. It's very funny. So yeah, we can totally do that. And he says quickly Googling a Miami tourist map, see various things that might be in a place like that. That looks promising. Okay. Okay, so I think, so yeah, that takes care of the water situation. Also, bonus, it's in Florida, so if we want, we can have were alligators, which I'm always fond of.
Yes.
Mokole, they are called. Well, overall, there are. That's one type of mokole. There are like so many different types of mokole. It's ridiculous. It's like one of the few. That's one of the few werewolf books I got was the Changing Breeds Mokole book, because I like lizards apparently. So that's, yeah. I think that nails actually a lot of, and then that even just the idea of Miami sort of just gives us a lot of shorthand that we can work with as far as like, okay, what kinds of things are here. And so I think that'll work for me. I have not been to the place in real life, but I hear it is delightful. And then I hear it is
Smith
not
has
delightful.
a high opinion of it,
Yeah.
so it's enough for me.
I hear many things. All right, I guess let's go ahead then and move on to the domain record, which is the planning record in Durance, and just kind of get that nailed down a bit. We already talked a little bit about it. We have W, X, and Z are the things that are true in this case. W is normally workforce, which is an effective workforce. Workers are a mix of motivated, healthy, and skilled. Labor pools deep and wide. In this case, I'm saying the coteries are cooperative. That means that, and again, this is from the perspective of the Camarilla side. that coteries in general will help out when you ask them to help out. The vampires in general look out for each other in the city, and so it's not that necessarily hard to manage in that respect. So you can actually count on, if there's a problem in the city, you can generally count on the coteries of vampires that are there to, the groups of vampires that are there to kind of come in and pitch in when they need to. So that is good. Then we have the prosperity record, which I didn't have to change much. Prosperity is high. Prosperity is high and growing. In the context of Durance, that means agricultural or industrial products are moderately successful and individuals have a chance of bettering their lots. And what that means in this case is it's a very successful domain. A lot of people, a lot of other vampires, it is a celebrated domain. Perhaps other vampires have come to visit this domain in Miami or close to Miami, and it is meant to be held up as a shining example of the kind of domain that you want. Boy, did we fool them. And then we have justice. Endurance. Justice is universal. When you have Z being true, it says the rule of law is firmly in place and the judge advocate presides over a functioning of truncated judicial system. Here, what it's going to mean is justice is swift. The prince in any Camarilla city metes out justice. The prince and the sheriff and the scourge, when required, will basically keep everything in order in that respect. In that, when something goes wrong, I'll put it that way. When someone crosses a line, when someone breaks a tradition, and when they find out about it, they act quickly. That's what that means in this case. Now, that is a counterpoint to the things that the downside of this. The letter U, which is not present. Planning is meticulous. That's the same description as endurance. It says the colony is well planned and laid out, intelligently arranged according to both function and, in some measure, aesthetics. In this case, the Camarilla structure is a fairly well-oiled machine. Or it would be if it were true. Planning record. The colony is essentially unplanned. Structures and services are scattered as though by pure inelegant chance. Everything is inconvenient. I like to imagine, kind of, because this is a celebrated city, that these are things they think are true outside, but they're really not. On the inside, this means that things are, it's probably, so sure, justice is swift when they find out what's going on, but how do you get anything done? They haven't really planned much. Someone probably just came in and claimed the princedom, and that was it, It was probably, I'm imagining it's, there's a bit of either a laissez-faire attitude or they just don't pay attention to detail. Then we have density. Population density. In an ideal circumstance, the population density of Kindred, the vampires, would be low. You wouldn't have a lot of vampires, and so, that's, so that, better for each of them. In this case, density is high. Colony is either cramped to the breaking point, inviting disease or discord, or it's spread across the land so thinly that services are strained. And in this case, too many vampires crowding into freaking Miami to try to get at all of this wonderfulness that they keep hearing is here. And apparently that's not really going to be good, because that means you're fighting over your controlled population, and when we combine that with the fact that they're very restricted hunting grounds, and only certain areas can be fed from, depending on who you are, that does keep things rather on a tight leash there. But it also keeps things rather tense, I would say. Then finally, order. Order is not well established. Endurance, that means the convicts may run the colony or be in semi-open rebellion or be otherwise openly violent and prone to misbehavior. In this case, You could probably just take out the word convicts and put in the word anarchs. Uh, the anarchs may actually, in fact, run the city or be in semi-open rebellion or otherwise openly violent and prone to misbehavior.
I like prone to misbehavior as just like a description.
By and large, yeah.
That's great. I love that. That's like every D&D group ever.
Pretty much. So what we're saying is that the anarchs are playing D&D and the Camarilla is playing Rollmaster. Is that kind of where we're landing here?
Oh dear.
Either they're more, or I don't know, they're terribly disorganized. It could be they could be playing a story game. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, 2 different games are being played here. Clearly,
they're playing Pathfinder. There's a lot of rules, but nobody knows what they all are.
And they're always grappling. There's so much grappling going on. So many times, for some reason, I had to create grappling characters. Why? Why did I do that every time?
Yeah, the Camarilla are trying to play 4E,
Yeah.
and the Anarchs are trying to play Pathfinder, and it's just,
I don't know what's happening anymore. What? This isn't a video game? I don't understand. Okay. All right. No, I have actually. I'm just going to give the disclaimer. I've actually played all of the games that have been mentioned except Rollmaster, and I have enjoyed all of the ones that I have played. But what does this mean? What does this mean in terms of what domains this is? We can sort of try to figure out kind of so. It looks like in order to get anything done, you just have to ignore the structure for the most part for anything except as a blunt instrument. That's what it sounds like to me. What do you think?
It sounds like something coming out of chaos. Like there's this high prosperity and the high resources, as if somebody had done the work to make this functional and the justice system is there, but almost like there's been a really strong shift of power or something and it just hasn't been established. Also, like I'm sure that would work out as we fill in the Prince character, but I feel like that's something where it's just everything is still up in the air. And that could also be population density. People could have brought in more vampires or made more vampires in order to resolve whatever conflict was happening.
So there are a few different ways one can play with this.
Yeah. You could also see this as maybe like some of the people in power, maybe in the court or the council or something like that. Perhaps there's some bribery going on as well. So justice is swift if you have the means to get it, right?
Yeah. I like the idea that maybe something that often happens is when you have a change of, say, someone comes in and kills the prince and seizes Praxis, something like that is known to happen. Anytime there's a shift in power like that, there's total potential for things to just go to hell in a handbasket immediately. So it could be that whoever it was a well-oiled machine until there was a shift in power, and it could even actually it doesn't even the prince might have stepped down even, and it would have happened, or the prince might have been taken by a hunter or something, or by one of the possibly.
What if the prince contracted this disease?
That easily
this blood disease.
Yeah.
And so maybe he's still alive, but he's weakened, and that is opening up political opportunity structures. But that's opening up opportunity for anarchs to maybe start that shift in power.
Yeah, that's possible too. Totally. And so there's like, who's running the show? We're not sure who's running the show. All we know is the sheriff is pissed right now.
Truth. The sheriff is out for blood in more ways than one.
Yeah. Scourge is collecting heads like candy. Quite possibly, we don't know. Also, one thing that I haven't mentioned is the Sabbat. There's the possibility that there's the Sabbat out there if we want to use them. For the purpose, I didn't go with Sabbat notables for this in particular, just because I think it's, since we're emulating Durance, these societies need to somewhat interact more with each other beyond just the I want to punch you in the face level, which there's plenty of that between the Camarilla and the Anarchs, but the Anarchs are at least usually tolerated by the Camarilla. There's more interaction there that goes on, and so that's why I chose it. But if we want there to be a savant present, there totally can be. There's another destabilizing factor if we decide we want to go there. But just given what we have, we may have enough already as far as things getting unstable. Yeah, by and large, the way that things are, shall we say, the idea of this whole thing, the idea is, as we, so I think we're going to, yeah, well, okay, before I get to the idea, let's actually do the drives real quick, so that way we'll have that available to us. Put thing in book as bookmark. There, yay. So you'll see sort of over on the upper left, I'm going to go ahead and change this in the overlay as well, so folks can see it. We have to pick what the third drive is. Now you've got servility, you have savagery. Those are two competing things that are going to be happening. But then there is a third thing that we have to decide from this list. And the way we do that is we go around and we each cross something out. And that will determine it. So I would like to start with Janaya. If you go up, you should be able to access the paintbrush. If you just go under freehand, and you can, if you want to go up and pick a color, and you can cross one of those out. Status. Okay, status does not drive us. A very important thing in vampire status is, but it's going to be one of the others. So Jane, go ahead and cross something out.
Oh, I'm so torn because there's a couple that I want to cross off. But I think this one's Gonzo.
Okay. All right. Let me find that color.
You'll notice I have trouble coloring in a like controlled manner, so sorry.
Okay.
It just feels very definite.
This is all about drawing outside the lines. All right. I am. It's an interesting question, really. Because, on the one hand, it'd be really cool in many ways to leave indulgence on the table, but at the same time, I have, since I played in a game not too long ago that had indulgence, I kind of want to cross that off in this case. I mean, it's an awesome thing to have with vampires, but I want to see kind of if this goes in another direction. I'm going to go ahead and cross off indulgence there.
That was my favorite one.
Sorry.
No, this is how this game goes. We'll tell a good story no matter what, I'm sure.
It's back around to Janaya.
I don't know. I don't feel like I should cross off safety because the disease is so prominent, but maybe that keeps it from being the main focus. So I'm going to take safety out.
Yeah. It's basically whichever one of these we want to come up a lot, possibly. And so, Jane, you get the deciding...
well, there's going to be no harmony here.
Control!
Nope, it's control.
Awesome. Okay, that is what drives us. Control. I'm gonna write that down there. Control. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, that is our third drive. That is our other drive there. Control. Excellent. So now that that's decided, we can, he says, trying to get the controls right here. There we go. Haha. Yeah, back to the city survey there. Good. So we've got that worked out, and so that's going to be a thing. Whenever there's uncertainty, and I'll get into it more. It's one of those three things is going to come up generally because we roll the dice to figure out what happens next at that point. So let's see. There we go. After drives, notables. Now we're going to get to the characters, the actual characters that we're putting in here. So as we are kind of sorting this out, so we have these two these two different competing ladders here, what you do in order to figure this out is you're going to just claim a notable on one of the rungs of the ladder. And then you go, and so we're going to go around twice. We're each going to get 2 notables, one on each side of the ladder for each of us. And so, and when you claim one, that means you can't take someone either, your next notable is going to be from the opposite side of the ladder. So if you take a Camarilla notable this time around, you're going to need to take an Anarch notable next time around. Also, you can't pick from the same horizontal rung on the ladder. So typically, if you're like in the middle, it's on the right. I'm not going to worry about that so much in this case, though, because as I was trying to match all these things up, the Anarchs are very different in structure from the Camarilla. The Anarchs do have a bit of a structure, but it's a little bit different how it's set up, and so I'm not gonna worry about that rule so much. So if you want, say if you take someone a Primogen and then you want someone who's a chameleon, you can do that. That's not a problem, because they're really very different things. Do you want me to go over some of these titles and what they mean and all that first, or do you just want to sort of grab and we'll figure it out?
I'm not as familiar with the vampire setting, so I could use at least a few of these, but whatever.
Okay. So the quick rundown on the Camarilla side, you have the prince running everything. The prince has a court, which is usually a seneschal, which is like a vice president, almost basically, or a just person who is in charge of the day-to-day stuff of just running the domain, whilst the prince is in charge of it. You have the sheriff, who is in charge of just law and order, justice among kindred society. You have the keeper of Elysium, who arranges and sets up the safe places for vampires to meet, where all violence is forbidden, and anyone who comes into Elysium, they're not, they're not to attack each other, that kind of thing. You have the harpy, who keeps track of boons between different vampires, just basically who owes who. And you have the Scourge, who is a large hammer, typically. It was in favor a long time ago in the medieval period, in the Dark Ages, and is coming back in favor these days as just someone who goes around and is Judge Dredd, pretty much, and just executing strays. And sometimes nominally sometimes the sheriff's in charge of the Scourge, but each domain's different, so it just depends on how that goes. You also have the Primogen Council. They are usually a council of, sometimes it's elders, but typically they're advisors to the prince. Sometimes they're more powerful than the prince. Sometimes they're really the ones that are in charge, or sometimes they're just way down there realistically on that place on the ladder where we see it. They usually, it's one representative from each populous clan in the city, usually, is on the Primogen Council. So you would take someone who's representing their clan there. Neonates and Ancillae, neonates are the youngest of vampires. Ancillae are the ones who are a little bit older, but they're not quite elders. Just general members of the population there. I put under that independents and autarchs. Those would be either vampires that have declared themselves just sort of alone. They're not really part of the Camarilla. And that can be on an individual basis. So they're still tolerated as long as they follow the traditions, but they don't... so they fall under the Camarilla's purview, but they don't get anywhere. They're only recognized. They're not acknowledged members of the city. And so you have that. There are certain clans that are like almost completely independent, like the Assamites, the followers of Set, the Ravnos, what few are left of them, and depending on how many we want, and the Giovanni, who are very good at necromancy and money, or death and taxes, as we sometimes would like to call it. On the Anarch side, instead of a prince, they usually have the Baron. It's or sometimes in some cities I'd heard it the first citizen, where that's just the person who just organizes stuff, basically. Chief organizer in the city. They're all supposed to be equals, but the first among equals. However, whether it depends on whether that's real or not. We'll figure that out. Then they have usually assistants that are often, they go by different titles. These are not formal titles on the Anarch side. The emissary, if I recall correctly, that's the one that they usually send out to talk to other vampire sects or other people. Usually they send them out to talk to the Camarilla, usually. The ambassador for the Anarchs, as it were. The sweeper is pretty much a census taker, just goes around and will just keep track of all the Anarchs in the city. And that's pretty much all they do. They just want to know who's where. And that's their job. Sometimes the Baron will also have access to what they sometimes call a chameleon, or there are a bunch of different terms for this, like I think sometimes they're called a bond, like in James Bond, or a spy. Those are vampires who are infiltrating other sects, or masquerading as Camarilla members, or other such things, and so they are intelligence gatherers. Sometimes they're high up in another sect. You have, in general, these are not titles, but you have people who act as advisors, kind of like the Primogen Council does, people who act as enforcers, kind of like the Sheriff and the Scourge do on the Camarilla side. Just the either the beat sticks or the smart people that you sometimes will gather to talk to as the Baron. And then general citizens, who again are all supposed to be equal under the Anarch movement. And that's the whole ladder, and who those are. So what we want to do is go around and pick from these lists. So you get to basically pick one and you keep going. Yeah, I think we're just going to keep the same order. I think that'll be easiest. So Janaya, you will get first pick of whatever position on the ladder you want. So you get to name someone on that in that position.
And we said that the prince was somehow infected.
Yeah, we can totally go that way.
I think I like that idea. I'm actually going to grab the seneschal.
Okay.
Then. I
Sure,
don't know
absolutely.
how do I click this?
So you would go to the left under the on the left-hand side the text.
There we go.
And I recommend using I think it's Contrail. Let me test that really quick. Yes, I recommend the Contrail font for this.
Okay.
And you might want to pick a color for that too, just so that we know it's yours. And so you would.
So I'm gonna do a seneschal, and I don't know what the name is going to be yet.
Okay.
So that'll come last. But my idea is that the prince is a ventru, going along with kind of like the business in this brand distinct Miami. But the character I'm coming up with worked a lot in art dealing and in blue chip art galleries in the area. And as a result, had just gotten comfortable with the idea that the prince was doing what the prince was doing and everything was going to continue being fine, and became a little bit more of a hedonist than getting the sort of favors in place that they would need in order to, be functional as a second in command.
Yeah.
And so just has a lot of connections with the Toreadors, and maybe even connections into Fae Society and Fae Courts if they're there for, really hedonistic drug-based parties.
I love
and
this.
just is not prepared for any sort of leadership, and is now being thrown into this role of having to back things up, and just not only isn't ready, but just doesn't want to.
Oh, I love that. I love this so much. This is actually giving me an idea of who I want to play. It's one of these. Awesome. So yeah, you would just come up with a name and a clan for them. And it sounds like, are you going like Toreador with this, do you think? Or
Well, no, I think that they're actually going to be a Ventru,
Oh,
like a
cool.
child of the prince,
Oh,
but
nice.
through this path of having been involved so much in the art scene, just became more and more of a hedonist. So
Yes.
the blood call and the powers are there to be this organizational, orderly, power-oriented individual. But 50 years of indulging in hedonism in the art scene has just made them totally soft,
I love
and
that.
totally unprepared.
That's very cool. I like that. So cool. So that's the one you're picking, and so feel free when you have a moment to sort of just write something in there. The other positions can exist. When you pick someone, it doesn't mean that the other characters aren't there, but it just means that they're not going to be a notable for what we're doing. So they can still be there in the background. They're still available as NPCs or what have you if we need them. And so next we go to Jane. What would you like to? The
Yeah.
court rung is taken, but everything else on there is open. So what do you want?
Sure. So I think I'm gonna pick a neonate
Okay.
on the Camarilla side. And I'm just looking up some of the clan information. My idea is that this neonate is like obviously sort of brand new, but is well connected to somebody higher up in one of the two ladders, and I haven't really determined that.
Sure.
But and then I am not super familiar with these clans, so let me take a look at
Sure.
the clan listing that you sent
Sure.
and just see.
No problem. You can take a look at that, and I will see about a pick that I wish to make here. Let's see. There are a lot of different things I could do here. Because there's certain certain things in do I want to play someone who's more in charge, or do I want to play someone who's more just figuring things out? There's so many possible choices. Yeah. I think I'm going to go over to the Anarch side first for this, and I think I'm going to... Yeah, just so that we have one, because I think this will be interesting. I think I'm going to grab the emissary, just so that that's a thing in play, because I'm curious how it's supposed to be someone who knows kind of how the political system works, which I was never great at it really myself in real life, but we can pretend. So yeah, let's do that. Let me grab the something there, and let's see. I am once again using the NPC deck from the Cypher system to figure out names and such. And let's see, who is this? Dun, 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 dun. Okay. I'm going to name this one Fraser. With a Z, because I can. Fraser. And let's see. There are usually a lot of Brujas in the Anarch movement. So that's entirely possible. I could go with that. For an emissary in this case, I think I am actually going to go... Yeah, that'll be interesting to me. For the emissary in this case, I'm going to go with a Nosferatu, which sounds weird. It sounds like someone who should be antisocial. You would think that they would pick a Toreador to do this kind of thing. but they, I think that amongst Nosferatu, the Nosferatu clan is very much more together, even on a clan level than a sect level. First off, and so I imagine this is someone who just knows a lot of people, maybe someone who's been there long enough that they've seen multiple princedoms, and so they're just at this point they just know how to survive, and they've kept back long enough, to keep from being seen too much as someone in power per se, but then also it's someone that just by virtue of being in Nosferatu already looks kind of humble enough to the Camarilla that they're not going to necessarily think of him as a threat to their power, per se. It's like, well, this person can't possibly be plotting to kill the prince and take his position, which might be a mistake. We're not sure. But right now, I think this is someone who's just interested in just keeping things running, and does a lot of that behind the scenes. So that's going to be Fraser. And this goes back around to Janaya. You get to pick. You're going to need to pick from the Anarch side.
I think I'm going to do a citizen, and her name is going to be Spark, and Spark is going to have become a vampire during whatever conflict was happening recently before, and she's going to be a Malkavian. And she was embraced pretty young. I'm going to say she was probably a late adolescent, and she had burned her group home to the ground and then gone sort of slowly more mad with really bad psychiatric treatments that she'd been through that were direct, that were trying to fix what was wrong with her, when really what was wrong with her was the group home she burned to the ground. And I'm going to say that her sire was killed in whatever conflict was happening before, and so she was left kind of on her own and has sort of mingled in with the Anarchs, but isn't really moving up or finding any position there because she's just too kind of weird and crazy and random. Nice.
Cool. Very good, very good. And now back around to Jane. So citizen and the assistant rung are taken care of, but you can pick from the remaining three.
Yeah, I'm thinking I think I want to do a chameleon. And I'm trying to decide if maybe yeah, I'm thinking probably Bruja for clan.
Okay.
Unless there's something else that you think would make more sense. But
bunch of different ways you can take it. It's someone who's good at pretending. And they can, but the thing is that can mean a lot of different things. It just means they have a cover identity. And it could even, doesn't necessarily mean they're even using a different name per se. It just means that they're known as something else. Or it depends. Do you want to play someone who's more of a sneaky spy or a pretendy spy?
I think pretendy spy.
Okay, so I mean Bruja works for that. Do you want to so someone who's maybe just do you want to play someone who's like in a position of power in the Camarilla, or is just among the general coteries watching from there, but is really working for the Anarch movement? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, I think she... Oh, maybe maybe she's a regular attendee at our Seneschal's parties.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very good. Very
Yep.
good. All right, so back around to me. I must pick from the Camarilla side. And just because there is so much of this things flowing in this direction from the idea of vice, as presented from the choice of Seneschal, I'm going to... I don't even know if I call this cheating or not, but I feel compelled to go all the way down to the bottom and pick an independent and play a follower of Set.
Cool.
Just because there's so much opportunism going on that I think it's this is something that is going to be like catnip to them. So let's see. Who do I want? Dee. Strangely enough, I'm getting these very normal-seeming names that keep coming up. Usually, there are a lot of very, very, very weird names that I get to at first, or very different names. But it's all showing up as ordinary right now. Jeff the.
Oh yes, Jeff of Set. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Jeff of Set. Yes. Gary of Set.
It's like people who name their dogs like Colin
Yeah.
or Justin or something, and I'm like, that's a very normal human name. Okay.
Yeah. All right, I got it. So, yeah, here we go. Owen Steele. His ridiculously macho-seeming name.
This very quickly becomes Die Hard.
I know, right?
Seriously.
And is just sort of kind of setting things up. Has a little underground temple somewhere that where he's sort of doing the Setite thing and gathering folks to the banner as need be, but then also helping to run vice through the city. Ideally, it had approached as a way to help to help control vice, because there's a lot of crime in Miami. There were whole TV shows about it, and it's one of those things where they needed help, and it's that thing where you come up, well, I could do this little thing for you if you want. Totally, that would be no problem. You offer a little bit of help, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and just sort of let them owe you mightily by the end of things. So I think that's who I'm playing for that. That'll be that notable that I'm responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now we've made these characters. We're going to now make their lives miserable, or their unlives, as it goes. That's our next job.
Yeah.
We now go to oaths, and so normally you go around and you just sort of assign oaths to people, but just for time's sake, what we do here is just pick for your notables an oath. They can be one from the list that I have further down in Roll20, or you can just, if you want, you can make up something that's along those lines. It's got to be something that involves resisting it involves the unique drive, the drive of control. The idea along the lines of, everyone wants control, but I will never do this thing to get it. And so that's kind of the idea that you're looking for when you're picking out your oath. And so you need to do one for each character. And just looking this up and down.
Hmm.
Because when we get into play, we're going to aim at breaking these oaths. That's
Mhm.
kind of what this is going to be all about.
And it is supposed to follow the "I will never" format, right?
Typically, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I will never do this thing. One way or the other. And then what that does is encourage us. Remember, whatever you pick out, that's going to encourage us to put you in scenes where that's that's going to be the question.
Hmm.
Oh, that's good. Let's see. A lot of different things here. I'm trying to just sort of figure out as the audience gets to watch us stare at these.
I know.
Sure, I'll narrate mine real quick because
Okay.
I finished both of mine.
Oh,
I think.
cool.
So Ren, the chameleon, who is infiltrating the Camarillas via some very fun parties, is her oath is that she'll never flip, right? She'll never go double agent. She'll never be flipped to Camarillas. So I will never betray my clan is hers. And then for Dantes, his is so I picked Tremere. Is that how it's pronounced? Tremere?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it mentioned that they're like they can sometimes be like magic users, or that they are sort of, that's their reputation.
Yeah.
And so I just assumed that there's always a price to using magic, and so
Yeah.
I'll never let my power overcome me. So whether it's going mad with magic power or using it against somebody I don't want to use it against, that sort of thing.
I like
So
that.
those are the two I landed on.
Yeah, what you should do is go ahead and put. Oh, did you? There you did. Yeah. Yes, you're doing the thing. Good. Yes, excellent. Just typing it in the thing. I've got mine for the Nosferatu. I've for my emissary. I will. Oddly enough, I will never forgive those who break the traditions.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, of the one thing that we have to do to make this work is we have to keep to the traditions. He's an anarch, but does follow the traditions. Because because to him they make sense. Now I just got to pick one for the other one.
Okay, I think I've got both of mine.
Excellent.
So my Seneschal Xavian, despite control, they will never betray their beloved sire.
And that's the prince, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
And then Spark, my adorable little Malkavian, despite control, she will never prevent authorities from coming to harm. So in any case where there are underlings trying to harm authority, she will always step out and let that happen.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just gonna get one more. That. Yeah. So I think where I'm going to go with this one. Let me make sure I'm in the right place here. Let's see. Yeah. Oh yeah. Hmm. I'm trying to pick one that's going to be that there's a that's going to there's going to be some challenge in keeping. Um, so that's kind of the deal here. Um, so, oh yeah, here we go. I will never give object back. I'm going to introduce an object now. And let's see. Let's see. I think the object is going to be a book. I don't know what kind of book it is yet. We're going to figure that out. But I will never give it back, whatever it is. And we'll sort of try to discover that in play. I have a feeling it's either an occult thing or it's a thing involving the control codes for the water supply. It's probably one of those two things. But or I mean, it could be like it could be a list, just it's where he keeps a bunch of, where someone was keeping a bunch of contacts. So it could be an address book. We'll figure that out. So anyway, looks like we've got that all set up for now. So we've got our oaths that we're going to be aiming at when we get into play. And then typically as we go on, play commences. I see that we're getting close, however, to the halfway point. So do you want to go ahead and break now for a little bit, and then we'll come back and get into scenes? Do you want to do that?
Sure.
That sounds perfect.
Okay. We are going to take a quick break, like 5, maybe 10 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes, and refresh drinks and do what we need to do, and then we will be back shortly. See you in a little bit. we have returned, and now we're going to see how we do this. Do Vampire Durance. I am very excited. This is something I've been wanting to try for a long time. So let's see how this goes. So in the course of play, the way this works is that we each take turns being the guide. The guide is kind of like a GM in certain ways, but in other ways not so much. Because as the guide, you try not to actively necessarily decide something unless you need to. You need to step in. But the way it works is that the guide asks a question, and then the other players need to answer it. And so in so doing, like I might say, what happens when... I wonder what happens when Ren is asked to betray their clan by the seneschal, or something along those lines. Basically, you try to aim the question at the... And that's a very sort of a more bludgeon-y type question, but that's how you sort of aim it at the oaths and put characters together. But I mean, you could also go outside the box with it. Your world building with your questioning as well. You can just create parts of the setting if you want. I mean, you can say what happens when if you're asking a question. I wonder what happens when Frazier is attacked by is attacked by a group of Fae. You know, you can just do that if you want to just introduce that in. The way that it will work is if there's any uncertainty, we'll go to the uncertainty dice, and I'll explain how that works the first time we do it. But it's the guide's job to kind of sort of say, okay, hang on a second, typically, and then choose 2 dice and then roll them. Let me actually go ahead and roll those once, just so that we have fresh roll on them. Each of those things. Random sides for each. Okay. All right. And so blue stayed the same. All right. And I'll explain. There's a little. It's not quite as simple as the highest die is what dominates the scene. But we'll get into that when we run into uncertainty, which we invariably will. But the cool thing is it can be interpersonal, or it can be physical. It can be however that works. We just don't know what's going to happen next. So you aim it at the oaths, and the idea is that the scene just should go enough to answer the question, and then when you answer the question, you need to end the scene, and then we move on to the next scene. We're aiming to hopefully break at least half the characters' oaths, and we'll see how it goes with this whole thing. And then when an oath does break, the character is no longer notable, but then things change in the setting, and we'll get into that mechanic when that happens. So I think I'll go ahead and start, since the host usually starts as the first guide, by way of demonstration, if nothing else. Usually, when you have now, the last couple of games I've had 4 total players. This game we only have 3 players. So if you need me to play NPCs or anything in this, I'll be glad to do that. Since you two are about to set up a scene for me, for one of your characters at least. But yes, it's like the guide asks the question, and then the other players answer it by figuring out the scene. It can be a long scene with dialogue, or it can be a short scene. It can be even an individual character just walking across a room, and if that answers the question, that answers the question. Just however you want to describe it. So what I think I'll start with, looking up here at the ladder we have. Let's see, who do I wish to aim at? Never prevent authorities from coming to harm. That's going to be hard to challenge, so I need to figure out if I aim at Spark, what authority might she care about suddenly. But I don't think we've developed that yet. So let me someone else. Yeah. Also, again, typically I'm trying to avoid having a person's two different characters meet each other, but it can be done if you need to. I'm trying to avoid playing any of my own notables in this scene. Can be done if we need it. It's sort of more of a guideline than a rule. Also, I think we may want to name the prince, at the very least. So that's probably a good idea, since Janaya, since you've got the seneschal and their sire, I will allow you to name the prince. Allow. I will ask. Would you please name the
card
prince?
deck of names?
Yeah, I know, right? I'm sorry. Would you like me to use the deck? I'll be happy to use it on your behalf.
I can do it.
Okay. Let's see. Well, should I figure out this question here? So I think what I'll aim at. Yeah, I mean, it's too tempting. We were just talking about Dantes's. Is it Dantes? Dantes's situation with their character. So I think what we're gonna do, just to start things out, okay, yeah, the Tremere typically have a lot of secrets. They keep them very, very close, very sort of close to the chest. I think what I'm going to start with is what happens when Dantes comes to Xavian with a potentially dangerous way to find a cure for Prince Vincent. I think that'll play on your oaths there a bit, and we'll sort of see how that goes. And so it's up to you to kind of sort of work that out and play out the scene if you wish, and you sort of see what happens.
I think Dantes is like pretty convinced of his own importance. And so I think however he presents this request is, you know, kind of the video game character that like breaks all protocol to go speak to the authority that they have like by no rights should they be speaking directly to them at that, like it hasn't gone up through the chain at all. Nobody's talked to the council or anything like that. Where should we find Xavian? Where would find you think?
Why don't we find Xavian in their art gallery?
Okay.
And maybe it's sort of a pretty shishi party that's mostly artists and kind of high up Ventru and Toreadors. And you just kind of crash the party and walk in because you know that they're going to be there.
Yeah, I think so. So Dantes comes up to them, and yeah, I think just like walks straight on in. It just ignores like maybe you had somebody at the door, you know, and just like right past it. Like his disguise is confidence, you know, like that is. Yeah. Right. And so he walks up and he says, would there be like a formal way of addressing a seneschal? Is that would it just be like seneschal or like revered or your whatever or anything like that?
I think that's up to each individual domain if they want to assign it. I mean, seneschal is pretty much the title. The prince sometimes would be your majesty, but that's
got it. Okay, cool. So seneschal, I have something important to tell you. I am Dantes.
That tells me nothing about who you are. Also, we're in mixed company here. If you would like to speak to me as that title, perhaps we should go someplace less mixed company? I'm sorry,
course.
were you invited?
Well, but give me like 2 minutes of your time, and I think you will find it very valuable for both you and the prince.
Come with me. Yeah. They will take you back through the party to another room that also has art from the same room, but it's clearly a private viewing area for higher level collectors. And they close the door and lock it. And then turn around.
Just for funsies, were they doing anything that I interrupted at this party?
Well, they were probably, just sort of mingling.
Okay.
You know what? We can actually say that they were about to close a pretty major sale to a museum. We'll say they're talking to a representative from the Guggenheim, and it was like
NVD
totally came in, and they were like, "I'm trying to do my other job," but okay, whatever. So they lock the door with kind of a pronounced crunch on the door as it locks, and I turn around. You have my attention.
Seneschal, I apologize for interrupting you in this situation, but I have heard rumors of the prince's health, and as a practicer of Tremere thaumaturgy magic, in consultation with some higher members of my clan, I believe we might have a method of treating this disease that so many have been infected with.
I'm intrigued. You act as if the Camarilla has not already been looking for a solution for this disease.
Of course.
Please explain to me why your solution has not come up through the proper channels?
Well, some of the elders of my clan consider it to be high risk. As you may know, there is no practice of thaumaturgy that comes without some amount of risk.
Indeed.
And they want to waste time testing it on lower level people, or they're wasting time. I am aware of the prince's, I'm not fully aware, but I'm aware of the prince's health situation, and it seems urgent to me. And so I felt it was my duty as a neonate, as a new member of the Camarilla, to bring this to somebody who can make a decision, and an informed decision, and an urgent decision.
I see. Dantes, your name was?
Yes.
Child of whom?
You
can just say a name.
Sure, okay, yeah.
George.
Nope. How about Tobias? That sounds cool.
I see. So you have a treatment for the disease using thaumaturgy that none of the Primogen Council have yet heard. Or are you saying that they have kept that knowledge from coming to me?
Well, as you know, my clan has its secrets, and some members of my clan are worried about sharing this particular secret.
Now you definitely have my attention. What do you need to do this treatment?
Um, well, we'll need, and I probably rattle off like several like weird things,
Okay.
but the crux of it is we'll need an infected sample and a healthy sample, I would think. Um, and I think it is physically dangerous for everyone involved. Is the crux of the thing. For me or whoever's doing it, I think for the prince and for whoever we have as samples.
Well, I think first we would have to see how this plays out with people who are not the prince.
Of if that's what you think is best, Seneschal.
I don't know you. I don't trust you. I will certainly not hand over my sire to you, but I will provide you resources to show me how this works. So if we can call the scene there, my plan is
I think so.
Is that Xavian would basically dedicate a performance art space that's been locked off and unused for your research.
Mm-hmm.
And under the idea that the Tremere Primogen might be keeping this information from coming through, they will basically turn it into a clinic and manage to get a couple of lowly neonates that are infected and a couple of lowly neonates that are not infected, and whatever supplies you need delivered to this weird performance art space for you to
Nice.
do your experiment in, and then they will keep checking in to see how that goes.
I feel like at this point I need to roll to see how competent Dantes actually is.
Well,
because I'm not 100% sure.
Well, the fun thing here is that the interesting thing is here we can do that if you want. The thing in between is that it depends on how that's gonna. Because there, I mean that takes care of that scene. No oaths were broken in that scene, and so that we know that that's being set up and arranged. So we can either just sort of decide, since it's outside of the purview of the scene, we can either just decide what happens, if you want to do that, or we can say that we don't know yet and keep going, or like I say, if you want, we can do a roll if you want to do that to sort of see where we're headed with that whilst I fix the cameras.
Nope, that was me, sorry.
No worries.
I meant to hit mute and I hit stop video instead.
Identities everywhere!
I think there could be a really interesting later scene in which Dantes is successful or screws up or something like that. Okay. So
yeah. I agree.
Alright, we will we'll go ahead and then table that for right now. And let me fix this setting real quick.
Hopefully Dantes was properly irritating. That's what I was going for.
It was nice. I liked that. I liked that a lot. Okay, so no oaths broken in that scene, and we'll kind of see where things go with that. And now the guide duties pass around to Janaya, and it is your turn to ask a question.
What happens when Fraser hears that the Camarilla side order has been upset in that there's a secret, non-approved testing for a cure for the disease happening somewhere in the back alleys of Miami?
Okay.
Is that a scene with Ren, maybe?
That could be. Yeah. because there's I think that's probably who we go to talk to, since there probably is a baron, but they're not they're not a notable, so it's there's probably what would happen here. So let me see. See back test. You know what? I'm actually going to pull up just because I went and I picked an oath where that I myself wrote not too long ago, and when I was changing the list. But I need to pull up the traditions.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the sort of upset of the order would be considered a threat to the masquerade at all, or just like the way that the test is being carried out.
The fun thing about that also is that you can say that as part of the framing for this that maybe it threatens the masquerade, or might threaten right of destruction, just because it's if it potentially will kill the whoever they're pulling. Also, if they end up pulling anarchs, that could also be a problem.
Okay, let me reframe my question.
Okay.
I wonder what happens when Fraser hears that a vampire was accidentally killed during a underground test of a cure for the disease that was not approved by the Primogen Council, but appears to be happening on the Camarilla side.
Yep. Okay. That'll work. Okay.
And I love that because Dantes is already screwing up. It's great.
Yes.
Great.
Excellent. Okay.
It's great.
And I kind of hope that like Dantes is screwing up by doing this thing, but maybe the research is actually spinning up some rumors of success, so that there's pressure that it's not necessary. Like, does the end justify the means for Fraser? Like, even though he will never forgive those who break the traditions, is he willing to like mess with his own boundary lines on the idea that there might be something coming out of it?
Cool. So I think Fraser's going to go to Ren about it, to try to sort of figure some things out, because he doesn't really have. Fraser doesn't have much pull with the cam right now, but. Yeah, so where would I find Ren?
So I think Ren is probably in regular conversation with Fraser, I would think, right? I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah.
And so I think they probably have a regular meeting spot, the classic, like, both sitting on a park bench, like, talking but not talking kind of thing. Or maybe in like an apartment that's not connected to either of them, that sort of thing.
Okay, so yeah, you probably found that you got like a note somewhere, and it's like, okay, we need to meet.
Yep.
And so yeah, it'll be kind of just somewhere on the outskirts of town, where at the Motel 6, or the Motel 6.5. Or whatever it is.
6 3/4.
6 3/4. 5 3/4, actually. It's not quite as good as the Motel 6. So it's World of Darkness. Things don't work well. So I think we said that the human population is high. So there are probably still even people around here, but it's as far as privacy goes, we kind of need to sort of chat. And but navigation's easy, so that's what you're like, okay. And so maybe it's like he's got just sort of a room rented here typically. So I think you're gonna walk into the. I think that Ren walks into the room, and when she closes the door and then turns around, and you walk into the room and the TV's on, but there doesn't seem to be anyone in there. When you walk in, you close it, and it's like local news. And when you close the door, then Fraser appears in the chair. And
you do love that trick, don't you?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that you can't be too careful around. These parts, as sometimes get interrupted, and it's a lot easier when people are wandering drunkenly into the wrong room to not find anyone in there.
Of course. What, the note said there was something urgent. What's going on?
Ah. So, he just sort of gestures at the TV where there's a report about people collapsing from heat exhaustion more than normal.
Okay.
And he says, "You know what that means?"
Well, humans have always had a way with ignoring the obvious, but what?
Somewhere in the lovely inner ring of the city, which is where that's happening,
Mm-hmm.
there's some kind of a feeding problem that's not that's of the sort that you'd normally find out here, just normally among folks that are infected. Now, that's a sign of something that I heard about recently, I think.
Okay.
And this goes, if it goes up as high as I think it does, we're going to have problems. I know things are already unstable enough over on the cam side of things, and they've
Yes.
I think they may be losing their damn minds. And
I have seen some of that.
yeah, well, all right. They're trying, I think. I've just been putting the pieces together from what I've seen. And so that area, by the way, is near its group of hospitals. They have a secret lab over there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've heard rumors, yeah.
Yeah. I think the Warlocks have it. Not completely sure. But
Sure.
Warlocks is a term being just a term for Tremere. I can't remember if that's canon or not, but who cares? We don't care about canon.
Works for me.
And so I've kind of been keeping an eye on. We've been keeping our eyes on what's been sort of going out, and that combined with that sort of once I saw that clicked with something I heard a little bit at a party recently that I went to.
Mm-hmm.
And long and short of this is they've got a program where I think they're trying to cure the blood disease. And thing is, hang on, and he basically he's got a sort of a TiVo-like thing set up here. So he uses the remote and pauses, and he runs back this news report, and he just sort of points toward where the camera's pointing. There's like someone being interviewed in front of this sort of area.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of points. You see that back there? Back there. Points in the background. And he's pointing at someone pushing a broom.
Okay.
Right. So that, I believe, is a ghoul under one of Xavian's people. And you notice, if you look very carefully down the bottom there, they're sweeping up ashes.
Oh. You think this goes to Xavier?
Possibly. Thing is...
Yeah.
I'm
just going to decide I was at that party that Dantes, barged in on. Throwing my own self a bone. I did see something rather strange at one of the Seneschal's recent parties. I attend them. There was a younger man who just came in and whisked the Seneschal away, which is not unusual. But in this case, it didn't appear to be anything seductive going on. So, the Seneschal, they came out looking very grave afterwards.
So here's the thing. That place is extraordinarily secure. They've that area, I'm fairly certain they've got protections up and all manner of things. It's one of the few places I can't get in. So I can't confirm necessarily, but I'm pretty sure that kindred are dying as a result of what's going on. And if that gets out, that's going to basically quite possibly be, shall we say, the nail in the coffin.
Do you know if they're having any success finding the cure? I mean, this is something that's plagued all of us.
Well, given the reports of the that are meaning just sort of haphazard feeding inside the circle there, I don't think they are. But it's dangerous, and I think it's only going to take one or two little pushes for this whole place to be... I mean, this place is already a powder keg, but for somebody just to light the fuse. I think that... I know you're in with some of those folks. You maybe could find some things out that, oddly enough, in this context, I can't.
Certainly. Do I have a bargaining chip for information?
Let me see what I can get you.
I can certainly improvise, but sometimes it's easier when I have a little more leash.
Oh, certainly. I think, who are you going to be, let's just see who of you are going to be talking to, and I'll get something for you.
Well, certainly Xavian and their other
people.
Party attendants are...
Yes. I think I have just the thing. And I think that's where the scene itself is going to end.
Yeah.
I think what I'm going to do, since I don't think that actually actively broke any oaths, that scene, but I think the dirt that I'm going to give you is on someone important to Xavian who is a Bruja.
Okay. Cool.
Because then we get to lean on that oath a bit. And we'll see how that happens. And we can decide what that means as we keep going. But moving around, it's now your turn to ask a question.
Yeah.
Again, it's something we can go. We should probably shift the frame somewhere a little bit different since you can't really pull your own characters into it necessarily, or shouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, but still try to aim at some oaths that we've got on the table here.
Yeah, remind me, what's the basic idea of followers of Set?
Followers of Set, essentially, as far as most people are aware of, they're deeply into corruption. They are quite literally, they are worshippers of the god Set, who was the founder of their clan. Who's also a vampire. There's a big snake motif that they have.
Sure.
That was a clan that was supposedly started in Egypt, some time ago.
Any particular tenets at all?
Very much. A lot of them are followers of this sort of path that sort of Catharism, the idea that, and I'm probably using that word slightly incorrectly, but it's in this context, their followers very much hedonists, and very much about getting people to sort of enlightenment through hedonism, that kind of thing.
Sure,
it seems to be one thing. There are other layers to them.
Okay.
But yeah, they're sort of, sneaky people, don't like light, but also big on vice.
Got it. Okay. I kind of want to see I want to see what happens when an authority figure protects or helps Spark. And I'm not sure if Spark is maybe is about to get pulled into one of these illicit tests, and is sort of rescued from that or what. But I want to see what happens when an authority figure helps Spark out of a rough situation.
Okay. Do you have any more thoughts about? Do we have any thoughts about details here as to how that's set up?
I'm not sure. That's the thing. I'm not sure which authority figure, whether it's one of our major characters or if we want to pull in like an NPC from like the council or the Baron or something like that.
Yeah, it could be the Malkavian Primogen.
Could be. Yeah, if they're important to them in some way.
Sure. Yeah. Somehow stops that from happening to Spark, and I don't know. Maybe there are repercussions for that. So.
So. Yeah. How do you think we'd want to set that up? You can see a number of things where you could have like the Malkavian Primogen. There are a few options here that I can see. Malkavian Primogen might be her sire, possibly. That's one way we could go. No,
because her sire is dead.
Oh, that's right. No, never mind. I forgot everything that we talked about.
Could be like her sire's sire, or
yeah, could be related by blood in that sense. Okay. This is going to get slightly metaphysical if we go this way, but we could use the cobweb. We could use the Malkavian Madness Network essentially in this, something that.
I like the sound of that. I don't know what the heck it is, but I'm so excited.
It's kind of it means different things to different. It's meant different things to different game developers over the years. One way to look at it is communication, mental communication on some level. Another is that they share the same dreams, or that they're all sensing the same, feeling the dreams of their founder Malkav. So a possibility would be like, if we pull that in, just something where psychically it would seem as though she is tied to this other Malkavian and would consider her lot in with theirs, possibly, for some reason.
She could be so psychically allowed, and being pulled into this test could both be like being pulled into the group home and like being pulled into the psychiatric unit. And so it's just making her send out all of this nightmarish craziness that is messing with the rest of the Malkavians. And they're starting to get really itchy and fighting against structure inside the clan itself, because everybody's feeling trapped because she's being so psychically loud about being stuck in this test.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm naming a Primogen. Lavona. And I think what's going to happen, is that... and we can actually sort of... This is going to be more of an action scene, I think, in some ways, but we can communicate a little, roleplay a little bit with it. If you're okay with this. So first off, if Spark got pulled in for the testing that's going on, first question is she one of the infected or non-infected?
I don't know. We can go ahead and make her one of the infected, and she just hasn't been concerned about it because it's just going to make her frenzy more and more often, and she's like, well, I'm just crazy, it's okay.
All right.
So it takes her, so the way that it's manifesting for her is that it takes her from like a usually just docile, dreamy kind of crazy to a kind of psychotic raging crazy, which is a lot like the snap that she went through when she burnt down the group home.
Okay. So here kind of is what I am thinking. If I may, I think in this scene, Spark is undergoing this. It's essentially like almost a form of, it would be like a form of torture, and we don't need to get into too much pain necessarily, as this is going on. But it's been, she's been sending out this, as this testing of some kind, this arcane testing is going on. Do we want to add any details as to what is happening in the testing for this, or just something that we see happening? We don't have to get into the nitty-gritty of the arcana, but like, is she hooked up to something, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's attached to a bed, which is like she's at least one of her limbs is like, psychiatric, the little leather cuffs to a bed, so she can't leave. And maybe, well, I don't know. Do you have any ideas from your Dante's stuff about what this cure might look like? Like, would they be putting different blood in her veins to try to push out whatever it was through the thaumaturgy?
I kind of think of it as, and if there's lore around what it's like, then let me know. But I kind of think of it as similar to if you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, the show, the animated show. At one point, the waterbender starts doing, like, gets wrapped up in some blood magic, and it's like it's painful, and it involves like being able to control somebody else. But yeah, I think that when they're using it for the cure, I think it is like pumping in and pumping out kind of thing.
Okay, so I think in the room we see Spark sort of attached to this bed, and that arm has what looks more like a mundane needle going into it, just like an IV that's putting blood in, and another one that's taking blood out. And I would imagine that we can, so that Dantes isn't in the scene, we can have Dantes kind of in a different room in a state of meditation and ritual, controlling the thaumaturgy part of what's going on. And I would imagine that whatever blood is coming in is, because it's pushing out this frenzy, is carrying with it all the things that would ignite frenzy and whatever the blood came from. So Spark is like being hit with these different horrors from whatever creature it came from, kind of like an iZombie when they eat the brain and they like get flashes of like other people's trauma. So she's just being like impacted with other people's trauma and not understanding what she's seeing, and she can't really see the room around her.
Okay, so I think what we see probably as this goes on, what I think what we're going to see is that, we don't need to go into detail about further is the process itself, but I think we know enough to kind of get an idea. So probably, I don't think that while the room is secured, I don't think there's anyone else in that room right now. But there is, I think you hear from outside a sort of a disruption. There may be sounds briefly of gunfire, sounds of arcane stuff going on, people and people screaming, and then suddenly, it's sort of like sounds of people dropping and screaming and just sort of crying, and then the door flies open, and you see Lavona, the Malkavian Primogen, standing there. The audience sees it. I don't think. You said that Spark isn't seeing the physical surroundings, but she probably knows that Lavona is there. Lavona, she's about, let's say she's about like 5'9" ish, sort of dark skinned, dark hair, and is wearing sort of leather jacket and just, it's a semi-casual outfit, but at the same time, and she just sort of steps in, and you see sort of behind her that a couple of people clutching their heads and just sort of like just scrambling and just sort of acting terrified, and just sort of that kind of sort of sense these needles being removed, and this idea where sort of just briefly as it clears, you just sort of hear Lavona says in your mind to mind without speaking verbally. Come with me. They will not harm you further.
So Spark, so what I'd like to have happen is I would like Spark to get up from the bed and be sort of in between this place of reality and non-reality. And in that state of non-reality, I'd like her to strike out at Lavona. So that Lavona gets, I don't know, I mean, unconscious isn't going to happen, but stunned or incapacitated in some way. You can decide however that is. And then I would like her to light the lab on fire. As the other people, and with the hope of burning the other people that are holding their heads in the doorway down with the lab. And then I'd like us to see Spark standing there looking down at Lavona, knowing that she is both the authority figure, but also feeling the closeness of their shared Malkavianness, and remember the choice of having to either leave or take other kids from the group home, and becoming sort of overwhelmed with grief for the ones that she had to leave behind. And I would like her to pick up Lavona and walk out of the burning lab and break her.
All right. Well, there we go. I was wondering for a second if we were going to go to uncertainty there, but no, that's cool. That works. That does break your oath.
Is that okay?
Oh, totally.
It was a lot of my narrating what happened to your NPC.
It's an NPC. it's not a notable. It's an NPC, so I have absolutely no problem with that. And secondly, it was good. So that's the other thing. So that actually means that character is no longer going to be a notable. You can, if you want, use the same, cross them out if you want to, just so that we have that for reference. But here's what happens when you break your oath. What happens is Jim looks for the page where you break your oath. Here it is. So if someone breaks an oath, when an oath is broken, the player of the oath-breaking notable must immediately choose one of the following options. A notable, and I think not necessarily the oath-breaker, so it should be directed at one of the other notables, changes position on the ladder, so you can move someone anywhere, and we can then justify in as to how or why that happens. Or a survey or record assessment changes for better or worse, which means one of the conditions we set up from the city, one of these letters changes. Either things get better or things get worse, basically. Either you add a letter or you take a letter away. So that's your second option. Third option is the drive changes. We would take out control and you would pick something else. So one of those three things is going to happen. So you need to pick one. So it's a notable changes position, a survey or record assessment changes, or the drive changes.
Does anybody have any particular feelings about what? The only thing I can think of is that is to remove coteries are cooperative, and say that this starts to blow open that there was something happening.
Yes.
Like now the Primogen of the Malkavians knows what was going on and knows that somebody ordered this. Even if the council doesn't know that it was Xavian, they know that it was somebody on the Camarilla side, and there's starting to be a lot of division between people about, well, does the end justify the means? Like, do we continue this research even though it wasn't approved research and it's broken traditions?
Yeah.
Or so I think that's what I would do, is I would remove the coteries are cooperative and just say the coteries are in conflict.
Excellent. All right. Excellent. There we go. So that has changed about the that has changed about the setting. So things are starting to slide downhill. Lovely. Excellent. Okay, and Jane, that was your question, yes?
Yes, that was my question. I had no idea it would be that effective. Nicely done, crafting a scene that was really good, you guys.
Coolness.
That was beautiful.
Well done. Well done on that, Janaya. That was good. So it is back around to me to ask a question, and let's see, who do we have left? We have Xavian, we have Dantes.
I really wanted to get both Spark and Owen Steele, and I just couldn't figure out how that was going to happen.
Oh, no worries. There's time. And remember, not all these notables even necessarily need to be important at some point. It's just however the narrative goes. But let's see. So, yeah, and I should probably also. I'll fix that in a minute. I think that. Just want to write NPC there just so that I remember that. Okay. Let's see. So we've got Ren, we've got Dantes, we've got Xavian. I think that after this so this is blown up, people have found out about it. And I think that so this isn't my question, but I'm just asking your opinion. Do you folks think that people found out that Xavian had anything to do with it, or why? But like everyone found that out, or do you think they just found out about Dantes' involvement? Well, I'm inclined to think that maybe Xavian was able to cover their tracks.
I'm inclined to believe that Xavian is still offering to provide resources for Dantes if he can get himself out of this mess to continue doing the research. And so Dantes doesn't want to turn Xavian in and have them lose those resources.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there's some people who are aware of where those resources came from. Like, I think it's rumor, or it's whispered, or there's a couple trusted confidants or something. Like, I don't think it's just Dantes and Xavian who know. I think there's at least a few other people, like Fraser put together with the what was it, the ghoul or whatever.
I think there's probably there's a group of people who are willing to turn a blind eye, a group of people who are actually disconnected enough to not see because they're wrapped up in their own stuff, and then a group of people who know but who haven't gotten their pieces in place to act on that yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think what I'm going to do, and this is going to involve another NPC, I think, is because I've got an idea. So it's not cracked completely open then. So what I think we're going to say, this is going to be a scene about Ren, I think, probably. And so my question, is yeah. I think what happens when let's see. They yeah, sorry, I'm still forming some of the specifics. Here's what it is in general. I want to know what happens. More specifically, does when a Bruja, and I kind of want, I'm going back and forth as to whether I want to give them a title or not. But there was someone who was working with Xavian to get things secure on this project. So I have a feeling it's someone who is like one of the maybe not the sheriff, but maybe one of the sheriff's hounds.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
And so I would say when that individual confesses their part in the in this whole debacle of the with the testing going on to Ren in a way that could potentially unlock the whole thing. Does Ren turn them in? What happens?
Okay, so this person confesses their involvement. Do they sell out Xavian as well?
That, I think, is... I'm not sure. I think that's something I'd kind of like to see whether that happens in the scene or not.
Okay, so you want the scene between Ren and this person?
I think
this
so.
Brew hopper? Okay, cool. So it sounds like maybe this person finds Ren. Right?
I think... Janaya, would you be okay with playing that character?
Sure.
Either that or they're both. I mean, they could both
them,
be at this party. That works too.
So I'm a Bruja who basically did all the hookup work for Xavian's. Oh, maybe I was in charge of figuring out what neonates could be gotten without it being a problem.
Yes,
yep.
That makes sense if they're otherwise working for the sheriff. Because they're like hounds going out and getting them. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
And I guess, so are we saying that Ren has gotten word of this?
Sure. So I think maybe Ren, given your clan affiliation, was maybe trying to pump you for some information to see if you knew anything about this. Maybe you two have known each other for a while. Could even be a sire or like a blood relative too. And so she approaches you and you have some kind of relationship. And says, what name do you want to?
Shanti.
Shanti. Okay. Shanti, I'm glad to see you here. I was hoping to catch up with you. It's been a little bit.
Good to see you, Ren.
Yes. Boy, what strange times we live in right now with the disease and that building burning down.
It's true. It's like they say, there's a curse saying, may you live in interesting times.
Exactly. What was Dantes doing? I mean, how did he get a lab? And
well, I'm sure I would have no idea, Ren.
Well, you must have heard the rumors, right?
About Dantes?
And who he works with.
The Tremere?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that's who he was working with, Ren. I mean,
Well,
it was some sort of blood magic thing. Do you have some sort of information on that?
well, rumors, whispers, but some of them credible. That it goes up higher than the Primogene Council. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know anything about that, Ren, but it sure sounds like an anarchist rumor more than it does the rumor of some, respectable Bruja.
Far be it from me to make trouble, but it is troubling that they were experimenting on their own. Right under the nose of a lot of people. Doesn't that worry you? I mean, what if it was a Bruja? What if they were pulling our own in? For who
Ren.
knows what experimentation?
Ren. The kindred have to have loyalty in many places at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that I am not the Bruja Primogen, and I would never speak for her.
Of course. No.
However, I must advise you that it is in the interest of our clan for you to stop pursuing this path of questioning.
So you don't think... So Brujas are involved?
I didn't say the Brujas were involved. I said that as a Bruja, it would be best for you and for the safety of your clan for you to abandon this line of questioning. Now, I cannot tell you much more than that, but I will tell you that our clan is safe for now. But if you continue to push this, that might not be able to continue being true. So you make your choices. But for me, my loyalty lies with my clan first. You decide which way you order your loyalty to the kindred. And she takes her drink, shoots it, and walks away.
And I think Ren gets deep into her drink at that point and is just like...
And one of the things was that I buried it a little bit, was that in the question asking was that there was sort of a confession going on, and I think we kind of got that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you'd like, I can add in that she would have said something along the ways of whatever my supposed involvement would be. My first order of business would be protecting the clan. If I am somehow accused, I would no longer be able to protect our clan.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So I guess technically the question is about Ren's response to this.
Yeah.
So,
And do you want me to roll uncertainty for this?
We haven't done it yet, so why don't we do it? Because I can't figure out which way Ren's gonna go. So
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
All right.
Let's see how this works.
Let's see. We have. I think I'm gonna roll. Let's see. We can have servility, savagery, or control possibly dominating here. I think I'm going to roll servility and savagery. and we'll see how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Since I picked 2 of them. So, roll that one, and that one. And now the way we look at this, it's not so much which die is highest as which die is higher than the next one in line. And that can be more than 1. In this case, that's not the case. Just looking at
in this
it.
case,
We only have savagery. So that means that this is flavored in the direction of savagery. So Ren's response will be flavored in that direction. What do you think Ren does?
Well, being a Bruja. Oh boy. So she thinks she's pretty certain that Xavian is responsible, that a fellow Bruja is involved. But I think the person that's really obvious is Dantes. And so I think she rages at him a little bit.
Well, one of my questions, and this is not me asking a scene question so much as is a thing we can kind of determine in between scenes. Again, since also because this is both of your notables. Do you think that Ren would kill Dantes as a result of this, or do you think that?
I think she certainly could. I think first she will threaten him to stop. I think.
Okay.
And I think he gets 1 warning.
Okay. So we can say that happened. We don't have to play that out. So we don't have to make you talk to yourself.
I mean, I do that on a regular basis.
Well, me too. So there's a big threatening warning has been levied at Dantes. I've not broken your oath yet. So that's kind of what we determined then.
Yeah,
okay.
She's close.
All right, we're getting there. Okay.
Is that not breaking the oath after the Bruja told her to walk away from the situation?
I know. That's.
Does that break your oath? Do you think that breaks your oath then?
I think it depends on whether Ren thinks of Shanti as a speaker for the clan, right? Or just a member of the clan.
I think that we said that they do have some position. It's not a high up position, but it is a position.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. It does involve the clan's power structure in the city.
Yeah. Maybe it's not Dantes she goes after then. Maybe it's the top level Bruja.
Ah, well, that'll definitely break the oath.
No, not goes no, not attacks the top level Bruja, but maybe goes and is kind of rage-y, not attacking them, but you need to know what's going on,
okay.
this and this and this, okay. This is what's going on, all this.
Okay, so that wouldn't necessarily. Oh, I see. Yeah, because it'd be either the Bruja Primogen, or unless there was someone that we decide is a Bruja in the.
Or if
the
the Baron's a Bruja.
That's a possibility also. So we can decide that. But yeah, then that though the question is answered. Then you're not betraying your clan.
Not yet. It would depend on how this Bruja responds, I think.
All right.
If this Bruja brushes it off or sweeps it under the rug or something, then we might have a problem.
All right. I think we have time for one, maybe 2 more scenes, possibly, depending on how long we make this. And so we're gonna probably want to just sort of. We're going to aim hard at the oaths as we do this, and so we'll basically just complete one more circuit of this, and then we'll sort of just see where we are. So that was my question, I think. So Janaya is next.
So my question is, I wonder what happens when Dantes finds out that the last piece he needs in order to cure this disease with thaumaturgy is located in a book held by Owen Steele.
There we go.
Excellent.
There we go.
Oh, and if I can, I want to say that also knows that the power in the book is very dangerous.
Okay.
Would you like a title for this book?
Both
Because I have one off the top of my head, but
Go for it.
let's. We could call this the just for the sake of frightening everybody, the Book of Typhon, or at least everybody who is deep into the World
Sure.
of Darkness lore. It's not like there are probably many books of Typhon, but this is one of them.
Yeah.
So we'll call this is the 5th Book of Typhon.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty sure Dantes' oath is getting broken here. So I think, knowing that, does Owen Steele have any sort of reputation?
Yeah, basically, if you want something, Owen can get it for you. It does not matter what it is, but if it's illegal, he can definitely. If it's illegal, he can definitely get it for you.
Okay.
So he probably
Okay.
works out of a. I assume basically works somewhere down near the docks.
Okay.
And is where kind of his little pleasure area. He has a pleasure barge. He has a barge that quite literally, it's a casino that he has people on, and it's the reason it's on a barge is so that he doesn't have to deal with local laws as much.
Sure, yeah.
Because there's like a
course.
loophole he's using.
That's a classic international waters. Yep.
Yeah, and so that's that is where you would find him.
Yeah, I think, I mean, as if Dantes is willing to barge in on the Seneschal, I don't think he gives a crap about barging in on Owen Steele. So he like crashes onto your ship, basically, like just marches right on, nothing, and finds you. Where are you and what are you doing?
I am probably. I am probably overseeing one of the. I'm probably walking the floor right now, in the casino, just going through, making sure that just checking in with the dealers and making sure that we're doing all right, as this is going on. So just sort of, I imagine this sort of a slightly scarecrowy figure with a mop of white hair. And an both obnoxious and expensive red velvety vest, and just sort of just walking around with a with a snake-handled cane, because of course he does.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when,
So Dantes walks in and says, "Owen, good to see you."
Hello there. It's been a little while. I didn't think this was your scene, as it were.
Well, unfortunately, I'm forced to debase myself and come speak to you now. What I
Excellent. Well,
need
if it's
from
debasement you're after, this is definitely the place.
Every time. What I need from you is, well, I will just come out and say it.
Can we perhaps come out and say it in my office? That might be a more a slightly better venue, and I've treats if you would like some.
Okay, fine. Let's go.
Excellent.
Dantes doesn't like to start talking in private spaces, apparently. Only public ones.
Yes. Excellent. Neville, the treats, please. And it basically will. And I think that's the thing. I think Owen kind of has sensed that about Dantes, but they know each other at all, and just sort of like, yes, quickly get them into a private room. And so and sort of walk into this office that's very kind of gaudy in many ways. It's got like several pieces of art in there and just sort of like gold lame wallpaper type stuff. Basically, I don't even know if that works as wallpaper, but we'll say it is. I know it's cloth, but sort of wall hangings.
I mean, there's vampires running around. I'm not sure where this
that's fair.
Belief really the line is.
And so this half-naked guy comes in with a tray with some just an assortment of little shot glasses on them, which have a ruddy texture, and sets them down and say, yes, that will be all, lady fellow, thank you, and sort of heads out. And they close the door. He sort of sits back behind his desk, puts his feet up. Now then, what can I do for you? He's picking up a glass.
Dante's kind of impatiently like, come on, let's go. He's like, look, I'm working on something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book that I need.
Just sort of spitting out the blood onto the desk, or like,
I know you have it. Don't try to lie to me. I know you are a slippery kind of dude. But I need this book, and I need it to cure our kindred of the problem that has been plaguing us.
I do have a library, but you'll have to be a tad more specific.
The book of Typhon. I know you have it. Don't try to deny it. It's integral in finding this cure. It's the only way we're going to save the city from the madness that has been coming out of it.
Sort of lean back, slowly gets up as his posture changes. Now, where did you hear a silly thing like that? Book of Typhon. That's rather a crazy sounding thing. Where would you even think to hear that such a thing would be in my possession?
Owen, don't make me do this the hard way.
Oh, well then, he says, sort of approaching, he says, perhaps you'd best not do anything at all, and his eyes turn gold. And I have a feeling that Janai should probably roll a couple of dice now, because I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, because Dantes is about to use some blood magic.
Yeah, and basically what... And basically, Owen is attempting to use it's a Serpentis sort of thing to sort of fix you in place. So
then we would roll.
So you get to decide. You get to roll 2 of those dice, and then how it comes out, which you get to pick between whichever dice qualify. So it's last roll only savagery did, but then
I think savagery and control. I think servility doesn't apply here at all.
Okay.
And do I /roll and then click the token?
Actually, all you have to do is you can go over to the token and right-click it, and
Got it.
You go to multi-sided and random side. Ooh. We have a tie. We go to a table. For when ties happen, unexpected things happen.
I'm so excited. Good job, Janaya.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can't roll dice to win, but I can roll dice to create chaos.
Excellent.
I mean, to be fair, I created a character that created chaos.
That's fair.
Dantes.
That's fair.
You just changed the entire political map of the city on accident.
Okay, let's see.
And he does not care.
Ties. Here we go. Where are they? Resolving ties. Page 52. There we go. All right. Let's see. No, that's not. Wait a minute. This was here. Hold on. Event list 110. There we go. All right. Here we go. Tied 4s. All right. And the other die is a 3. Yeah, if all 3 of them had been 4s, we would have had an epic event. But
Zut alors.
So, interesting. This could go a couple of different ways. Family, biological or otherwise, closes ranks. Now, the way that I would interpret this in the most horribly dramatic way possible is that either you brought your folks with you brought your clan with you, and they're closing in on the barge, or my fellow Sedites come out of the woodwork and close in on you. It would probably be one of those two things, I think.
Or both.
It could be both. There could be a massive snakes versus wizards thing going on here.
When you're a whiz, you're a whiz.
Yeah.
From your first blood magic to your last.
And so, what do you? How do you think this?
I definitely considered Dantes bringing like some Tremere backup, or even bringing Shanti. I decided not to do Shanti because like you're the guide for that, but so that was like I was like pretty close to doing that. So
okay. So let me just also make sure. The normal rules apply. In addition, some interesting new twist is added. So we also can say that control is dominating because that's because the regular rules for this apply. And so savagery is not bigger than control, servility is not bigger than savagery, but control is bigger than servility. So I think that means that the Tremere are going to win this one. Whether and Owen's kind of semi-independent anyway, so I think either way, whether he escapes, whether you kill him, or whether you bind him or do whatever you do to him after a knockdown drag out at his casino that probably causes it to go up in flames, because why not? The book is wrested from him one way or the other.
I think
they're gonna break his oath.
When he resists, and especially if Owen resists relatively competently, which I'm sure he does, Dantes absolutely loses himself in needing to use blood magic to subdue him. And I think he breaks his oath.
Joint oath breaking. Awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
I think he absolutely does. Yeah. No, I think he totally is, and I think it's a pretty dramatic scene. I think the Tremere, like his fam, comes and finds him after he's like, is it okay if he like kills Owen? Owen's only gotten like one scene. But I think he initially intended to like make him not mobile. I'm struggling with a word right now, but we'll just move on.
Hold him in place. I can't remember the name of the power, the specific power under Serpentis, but it's their eyes turn snake-like and gold and kind of freeze you in place.
And I think he's specifically, I don't know the mechanics, but I think he's specifically trying to use the blood magic to do it.
Yeah.
And I think he's gotten better at blood magic through using it like all day every day in science. So I think he uses that, and initially he wants to immobilize, that's the word I want. He wants to immobilize him, and he like maybe sucks too much out, or like gets really aggressive, or like gets really angry. Like maybe Owen still has use of like his mouth and is still talking and like maybe like insulting or like making Dantes mad, and he ends up killing him. And I think right at that moment when he's just done that in this dramatic like bloody fashion, I think that's when the Tremere family
comes in.
Like somebody arrives and they're like, what? Like
excellent.
And I think that's what happened.
Okay. After an awesome, possibly awesome CG fight, but anyway, awesome. Okay, so we each broke an oath, so we each get to pick a thing. Do you want to go first, or do you want me?
I think.
And again, either a notable changes position, a record assessment changes, or the drive changes.
Hmm. If you have something that you want to, like, that you want to do, like, go right ahead.
Let's see. I think. I kind of am tempted to. Yeah, because after this, I mean, there are a few weird things I could say happening with the ladder, but I think what I'm more interested in doing is making things go horribly with the city.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think mine will be ladder, so this will work out nicely.
I think somehow there is fallout here that since Vice is now going to be running unchecked uh, because there now is no longer someone there to control it. I think that that is going to. I think it's either going to do something about the population or the resources. I think that's gonna just annihilate the resources for the city itself. It's gonna kind of implode in on itself, and it's basically you can't get anything without it being tainted in one way or another. That just all of these public functions and everything, it's now like there's open gang wars, so it's not really safe to do so.
Yeah. So I've got a doozy on this ladder. I think after this, I think that Xavian is able to supplant the prince. And it's like pushed into it because the prince has clearly lost all control of the city. And the seneschal is next in line. And I think Xavian is able to cover their tracks enough that the little whispers about being associated with Dantes, clearly after this, Dantes has gone off, just gone crazy, just gone wild. Couldn't have been related to Xavian. Is the general feeling of the populace.
Excellent. So they go up there to the to the prince level. I'll go ahead and yank that up there. And
have fun. That's going to be a really fun city to really set you up for success there.
Yeah, best job opening ever.
Now I don't know if the prince has died of this disease or if he's just been sent away for medical care or what, but he's definitely not really the prince anymore.
So at this point, we need to kind of decide if we're going to try for one more question or if we're going to just sort of let it end there. We've got a fair amount of we've had a significant amount of change now. So I'd be okay with us stopping here if you want, but if you want to do one more question, we can do that. What do you folks think?
I'm fine with the amount of change. I guess I kind of with Xavian becoming the prince, the only last thing I can see is this concept of betraying their beloved sire and the idea of whether they decide to keep that power or whether they use that power to basically get Dantes out of trouble and make Dantes try this ridiculous cure on the prince. And then what happens from trying that cure on the prince, which is where we started.
That certainly could be a thing that we explore if we want to do one more scene, but that would be up to Jane to decide if that's
I'm totally down with that.
All right, we can give that a shot. Do you want to play anything out, or should we just roll for this? How do you want to do this?
How do you think Xavian lands, in the aftermath of all this?
I think Xavian gets to this place where they're just so grateful that they managed to come out of this all kind of smelling like success. But still has this feeling of deep love for their sire and this feeling of guilt about taking the princehood and wonders if they can't cure the sire and then they can rule the city together. Like, I think that Xavion's just been under so much pressure that they've lost grip on how this whole system actually works. Like, the city's busted, everything's busted, and they're just like, the only thing I have left is this mission that I had to cure my beloved sire. And so I think that they've really locked themselves away and are letting the chaos happen outside, and maybe have just sent people to go kidnap Dantes from whatever Camarilla prison he's in. Like, basically just like, use my authority, go get Dantes, go get everything, bring him here and tell him he has to do this.
Nice. So how do we think that goes? We can either say it, or we can roll if we want Jane to roll.
I'm totally down with rolling, but if there's a plot twist that one of you wants to see, I'm happy with that too.
I'm kind of leaning toward rolling as well, just because I'm not sure.
I like dice. Yeah.
Okay, Jane.
Okay.
You get to choose which 2 dice you want to roll.
Yeah, I think we're still gonna go with savagery and control. Like,
right.
Does Dantes lose it again in the middle of this? Because, like, he's already done that once. No, come on.
So you just go up to the arrow in the upper left. Click that first, and then you can go down and right-click on the die, and it should work. Oh, you did it? Oh, okay.
There we go. Yeah, I painted a little bit on the savagery die, so
no
just
worries.
Wow, savagery real wins.
Yes.
Dantes totally loses himself as he's doing this blood magic, and like, you can decide whether you think Xavion understands what's happening or not, because this is a Tremere secret. It's like an advanced use of this kind of magic, etc. But he totally kills the prince.
I think that sounds like, if savagery is dominating here, I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He absolutely loses himself in his power.
And then I think because savagery is the dominating thing, that then Xavion is going to kill Dantes.
We're just gonna burn this game down.
That's the beauty of Durance. And then Xavion is basically going to assume power of the city as a city of heartless vice, because their one great passion is gone.
Like Miami Vice.
What is left is
I'm sorry.
Control.
I'm not sorry.
Is that drive for control of the city is the only thing that he can focus on at this point.
Okay, well that I think that that definitely is a good, I think, place to end it there, as we have now determined the fate of pretend Miami.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated by the concept of like whether the Tremere like totally distance themselves from Dantes, or whether they like hate Xavion now and like maybe turn towards the Anarchs more. You know,
Maybe.
like there's consequences here.
Yeah.
I agree. That is, that was a lot of fun.
Chaos.
That's delightful. Thank you so much for playing, everybody. This was amazing. This time I am going to go around the opposite way from the way that I started. I'm going to ask folks to say what you thought of the game and where people can find you. Mm-hmm. And so I shall we're going around first to Jane.
All right. I am Jane, aka Cellardoor10, on Twitter. You can find me creating chaos in one-shots periodically. It's one of my favorite things to do. But you can also find me on Tuesdays, where I am a very not as much, well, sort of. I'm a less chaotic character because it's a long-term campaign. But that is over at Roll Control, and that's ROLECONTROLL. And that's Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Central. I play a half-elf ranger who is also a bit of an agent of chaos.
Excellent.
Yes.
Very cool. And what did you think of the game?
Oh, what did I think of the game? That was great. I had watched an actual play of Durance, not the vampire flavor, but just the sci-fi prison flavor, and it was cool. But I really enjoyed it. These mechanics applied to something a little bit different than the prison dynamic, so that was kind of cool. And, I got to make a lot of trouble. So there we go.
Awesome.
Check.
Excellent. Very cool. So much trouble. And Janaya, same questions. What do you think of the game, and where can folks find you?
Hello, my name is Janaya, and you can find me at Janaya on Twitter and on Instagram. I do have a Twitch channel. I don't stream games there, but if you're interested in art nerdiness, on Monday afternoons, I stream an art history discussion stream. Right now I'm talking about Daisy McCaig-Jones, who did the Fairyland Lusters. But next month, I'm going to be discussing and looking at the ridiculousness of medieval manuscripts on Mondays. And on Thursdays, I'm going to be running a stream where I'm working on my own copy of Reverse Fables in the style of the medieval bestiaries. So if you follow me there, you can find stuff out about that. Or you can just follow me on Twitter and hear me talk about that, games and other stuff there. As far as the game, I'm really enjoyed playing this. I like Durance. I really have an attraction to kind of two polar opposite games where you're given the ability to just endlessly wreck everything, or games where everything is beautiful and cheery. And so Durance definitely falls on that other scale, and I love it. And I thought it applied a lot better to the Camarilla versus Anarch thing than I had expected it to. So it was really enjoyable, and I liked revisiting the vampire world. I haven't played Vampire since very early Vampire, so it's been over a decade.
I also
that was fun.
Really enjoy games that reward you for making the good storytelling decision, no matter whether it's a good or bad effect on your character or your interest or whatever.
Absolutely,
I really, really enjoy that. Story Brewers, they make the Jane Austen The Good Society RPG. You can get rewarded for having just terrible things happen to your character. I mean, it's Jane Austen, so it's somebody thinks you're pregnant, but still.
Oh, that was awesome. This Durance always seems to encourage a chaos spiral, and it did not fail to deliver this time. I think this worked much better actually than I suspected it would, and so I'm very pleased about that. So I think that this game has a lot of potential for all kinds of conflicts, where you have two societies up against each other, and so I may try to do more things like this in the future. This was really cool. But as for me, once again, I am Jim Ryan. And you can find me at OtherDoc on Twitch and Twitter. My website is jim.com, where you can find my Geek Observation podcast and links to my various other podcasts, audio dramas, writings, and such. I've put links down below on my Twitch page to my Twitter, YouTube, and website, along with a link to a very silly short story I've released on Amazon, if you'd like to check that out. And incidentally, if you'd like to play in any of the one-shots I'm preparing for December, you can go down and click on the RPG sign-up link. I've got info and sign-up forms there. We're going to be doing Dirty Secrets and My Life with Master. And then at the very end of the year, I'm running a Lady Blackbird hack that I put together involving Shakespeare and robots. So if anyone's into that, still looking for players. Here on Twitch every Tuesday evening, I play... Here on Twitch every Tuesday evening, I play Urban Shadows over on the Off the Table channel. And that's full of torment, I think, and even more torment coming up, so very much looking forward to that. on this channel on Friday afternoons and Saturday mornings I play video games. Then no RPG this coming Saturday, but every other Saturday we do play Cold Ruins of Last Life, which is a setting for Dungeon World where we're all playing undead characters. Then 1 week from today, on Sunday, we will be finishing out the month with a game of Fate Accelerated. I'll be running a very strange scenario I wrote a while back called A Night at the Gallery, where the PCs are all characters from famous paintings. And so I'm going to very much look forward to tackling that. I think when we go to the outro card, to the end card, I'm going to probably also do a raid over to Grimjack21502. They've started up their session of Project Athena, Call of Cthulhu. They've been doing for a while, and so I'll probably take a look in on that for anyone who wants to participate. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, folks. This has been a blast. Take care, and I will see you all of a sudden. Farewell!